We have breaking news. Jordan Neely's family speaking outside court after a jury found Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide in Neely's death on the New York City subway. Let's listen.
Let us know that our lives have value. Jordan Neely was choked to death by someone who didn't care people was telling him to stop. Last week, the jury they couldn't decide on the top charge, but they come back this week and they give up on us. The family's hurt. I promised this family that we would get justice. We're still going to do that. We're going to move forward with our suit. The district attorney did a good job, but the jury in this case let us down. So now here's what we have. We have a call to action, because you have to do something with this anger and with this rage. Our call to action is to take care of each other. We can't rely on outside people. If we see someone asking for food, we have to take the responsibility to give it to them. If we see someone cold, to give them a coat. If we see someone going through something, to ask them if they're okay. That's how we help each other, because we can't rely on the system to do it for us. And clearly, if we get to this point, it's too late. We have to be there for each other, and that's our call to action. Everybody that's pissed off at this verdict, I challenge you to go outside today and help one person. That's my challenge. If you're angry, if you're hurt, go help one person. That's how we beat the system. That's how we turn this around, by being there for each other.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we gonna do, people? What's gonna happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Let's do something about it. Too often, we have Eric Garner's mother here. There's too often this is happening where we're left alone in this society. We got to stop that. We have to change how we impact each other. Jordan came on that subway car. The first thing he asked for was food, and he was killed. And the person who killed him was not held responsible. We cannot allow this to keep happening.
I got you. Oh. Look like the police are attacking protesters.
Are they?
Attacking protesters.
Good morning, everyone. Here we stand once again in front of this unjust system. I stood here 10 years ago because they did not give justice to my son with the chokehold. I fought hard to get the anti-chokehold bill passed, which did pass. But it shouldn't only be for police officers, it should be for civilians also. No one deserves to be choked to death. No one. And you know, we're in that courtroom and people are cheering for the verdict. They made the loudest noise, the judge did nothing. But when his father spoke out, they put him out the courtroom. Is that justice? Or what? We can't allow this to keep going on. We have to fight this system. That's what I had to do. I had to fight to get the little justice that I got. I got one police officer fired. There's more that need to be fired. But I tell this family, do not give up. Because that's what they want you to do. They want to discourage you. Just like they tried to discourage me. But 10 years later, I'm still fighting. And I'm not only fighting for myself, I'm fighting for families like yourself. That's why I have to come out when this injustice is done. If this had been the other way, if your family had murdered this so-called innocent guy now, it would have been a different story. He would have been in jail or would have never came out. But they don't do the same to us. It's two justice systems.
You know that.
And we have to stop this. And the only way that we can stop it is to stand together. Those of us who are against what happened, we have to speak up. We can't treat this just like another news story, not another press conference. We have to speak up, and stand up. So I just say today, we did not get justice once again. And I am saddened. I am truly saddened by the situation because it keeps on happening and no one is standing accountable for their actions.
You're watching Gwen Carr, Eric Garner's mother, speaking next to the family of Jordan Neely after a jury found Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide in Neely's death. Neely's father spoke earlier saying the system is rigged. Prosecutors had claimed Penny held Neely in a chokehold for too long, causing his death, while the defense argued Penny acted in self-defense. ABC's Stephanie Ramos joins me from outside a New York City courtroom, along with ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer here with me in studio. So, Stephanie, what's the latest on this verdict?
Well, Diane, protesters and counter-protesters have gathered here outside the courtroom. Protesters chanting no justice. They've also been saying Jordan Neely's name. Counter-protesters can be seen holding signs that read Daniel Penny is a hero. The jury today deciding that 26-year-old Daniel Penny, a former Marine, is not guilty of that lesser charge, criminally negligent homicide, which would have carried about 4 years in prison. When that verdict was read in the courtroom, there was a mix in reaction. There were cheers and there were cries. But right now, we know that police are with some of the protesters and counter-protesters within the pen to try and keep the peace there right now. But again, a mixed reaction in the courtroom and outside here in downtown New York City.
One of the things that the family's attorney, Dante Mills, pointed to there was the fact that the jury was hung on the top charge of manslaughter, but then today came back with not guilty on the lesser charge. What did you make of that?
It's confusing, not just in the sense of how they went about this verdict, first asking questions about justification, and then evidence about the chokehold and video, and then the definitions of reckless and negligent, then coming back and forth. It seemed like there was some real infighting in that deliberation room, and I'm really curious as to what happened there. Hopefully a juror comes out and lets us know. But I think, and maybe my opinion is wrong, I think this had less to do with the elements of the crime and more just of the division of the city. That the defense probably did a really good job of picking the right jurors for this case, that ultimately came down and said, no, I want Daniel Penny in the train when a situation like this happens. It doesn't make sense to me from a legal elements of the crime, but it makes sense to me in terms of how the city overall feels about the dangers and violences that they perceive in the subway.
Now, Dante Mills talked about system failures here. The fact that Jordan Neely was on that train to begin with, asking for food. Does this family have any other recourse? Could they, for example, sue the city or some other government entity here?
I mean, you can sue whoever you want. Whether or not it's going to be successful is the other question. I don't have all the facts as to why Jordan Neely was in the subway at that time, whether someone released him from some sort of mental health institution or some sort of health institution and he wasn't supposed to be released, if there were some sort of procedures that were overlooked or not done according to the proper process, then yes, then you can maybe pull together some sort of civil rights claim, but I don't see it, at least based on the information that we have, and I don't think going after Daniel Penny in a civil lawsuit will help them all that much either.
Stephanie, we also just heard from Neely's father there calling this verdict the result of a rigged system, and we heard Gwen Carr referencing the fact that Neely's father was also told to leave the courtroom at one point during today's hearing. What was the scene like there, and what sort of reactions are you hearing?
Oh, similar to what you just described. I mean, we understand that Neely's father was in the courtroom and did curse when that verdict was read, and that's when he was asked to leave. But then there were others that applauded that verdict, and that's the same type of reaction that we're seeing here. The defense lawyers saying in court, telling the jury in court that this was like Brian mentioned, you wanted a Daniel Penny in that subway because this was a heightened situation, because they say Jordan Neely was threatening others. They said that he had thrown this was last year, back in May, that Jordan Neely had thrown on the ground his jacket, was loudly ranting about being hungry and thirsty, and that he was approaching a bench full of women, and that's when Daniel Penny reacted. The jury clearly went home on Friday when that manslaughter charge was dismissed and thought about this, and they were ready to deliver their verdict today.
So, Brian, is there any recourse for prosecutors in this case at this point?
As the facts exist now and today as we know them, no, because they chose to dismiss the manslaughter charge when there was a hung jury, and then ultimately the jury decided not guilty on the criminal negligent homicide. But if we find out that there's some sort of impropriety or something happened within the jury room during deliberations that was inappropriate, illegal, or not supposed to happen, theoretically speaking, the prosecution could have an appeal based on that. But those are very rare, and I'm not sure if we're going to see something like that existing here. But as we see it now, no, there's not much more the prosecution can do.